Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Impact Farming Show. Today, we have an amazing guest. We have Marcel Kringe from Bushel Plus. How are you?
Hey, I'm good. Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's
I
awesome.
I am so excited to have you on the show. It's been a while in the making. You have a fantastic entrepreneurship, product development, farming, an amazing story. So I'm excited to have you on to talk about your journey. So why don't we get you to introduce yourself and your company, and we'll take it from there.
Yeah, that sounds good. Thank you. So my name is Marcel Kringe. I'm the founder and CEO of Bushel Plus Ltd here, headquartered in Manitoba, Canada. I'm originally from Germany, born and raised over there on a small mixed farm. Ag engineering and agriculture is really my background and my passion. I always say like I'm a farmer without a farm. I really farm kid by heart. And yeah, I have now the pleasure of running a company that's global, and it's a manufacturing and software company that is operating globally, but made here in the prairies. So that's a very short version of it.
I love it. You have such a fascinating story where you grew up, your farming travels, and then launching and developing products. So why don't we talk about your upbringing? I love your story. You grew up on a multi-generational farm in Germany. So can you speak to your upbringing and then roll right into how did you end up in Canada the first time? I'm curious about that.
Yeah, yeah, of course. So it's a small mixed farm. When I say small farm, we're talking 10 acres spread out over quite a few different fields. So, I'm born in an area where there's a lot of hills or mountains to a degree, and small cattle country, let's say, not much grain farming there going on. Lots of hobby farms in the area. So a lot of people work in like the metal industry or car industry. There's a lot of industrial jobs in the area, and people have a farm on the side as a hobby, basically. And then, so I grew up in that area. It's in the middle of Western Germany, near Cologne area, if anyone knows that. And yeah, I grew up with four generations on the farm. It was the grandparents, my grandparents, the blind brother of my grandpa, my parents, and my sister and myself, all in one farmhouse, like the same house, on the same farm, just like the good old days where everybody takes care of the next. And it's definitely been, it's been, it's been good to be raised that way because you see a lot of different things. You grow up with people that survived different times on this earth that weren't as good as the times we live in right now. At least we on the western side. There's lots of other areas in the world where it's tough right now, but it gives you a different perspective and a different appreciation of things, I think. So definitely a hardworking people that I grew up with. So
It's fascinating. That would add to your life and your experiences just through those other generations.
yeah, great grandpa passed away when I was just a couple of years old. So unfortunately, I was never able to talk to him, but he wrote a lot of things down from his
Oh,
past life. Well, I shouldn't say past life, but from his
yeah.
youth and how he grew up and whatnot and how the farm was built. And grandpa passed away in his late 90s. And I was there for that, and we're very close. And that's how I learned how to drive tractor with him and dad and my cousin on the farm. Like my my mom has four siblings and all their kids running around on our farm too. So our farm was always kind of the home for everybody.
Mm.
Everybody came to the farm and hung out there and did their thing. So we kind of all grew up together with the cousins. But grandpa, when he was working, he was managing and running a manufacturing business himself. It was a plastic molding or a plastic injection molding company. They were building those machines, and he was the manager there. But besides that, like him and my dad, they could fix anything. Still, my dad fixes anything today, from like you name it, from a tractor over a car to a computer to a phone, microwave, like you name it, he fixes it. So it's just interesting to grow up with them. And great grandpa, same way. And then I remember great grandma. I grew up with her. I remember her. She couldn't bite some of the tough German bread, so she would always like dip it into her coffee. And I was, as a little kid, beside it, doing the same with my stuff. And and then grandma, super strong women there in my life. My mom, same way, took care of the older generations till the last day at home.
Mm.
And then my sister, it's some tough ladies I grew up with there, thankfully. I'm very fortunate to kind of have that perspective. A lot of respect for them and the family that way. And yeah, there's a lot of stories just around that where it's interesting. That's how I would love my kids to grow up. I don't know if I could raise my kids in the city. No offense to the city. I just don't know if I could do it, because you would just run outside the house and you would be gone. We have a forest right behind the house, and
Mm.
you would be gone all day. See you later.
I love it. And you know what? We could probably talk about this for hours. And you're making me go back to my childhood, my grandma dipping her cookies in the tea, and
Yeah.
everybody in the audience. We're multi-generational farmers. Pretty much everybody watching this, right? So we're sitting here going, oh, the good old days growing up. And some of us are going, wow, that would have been weird, different, neat to live with great grandparents and grandparents. So that's cool that you share that. I love it. Great stories. Okay, so at some point in your journey, you ended up in the beautiful Canada here the first time. How did
Yeah.
that come about?
Okay, I'm trying to make a very long story short here for you, but I wanted to be a farmer and a work-wise. So in order to be a farmer in Germany, or be a hairdresser, or be an insurance broker, or anything, you got to do an apprenticeship, which is
Oh,
a 3-year program. And you got to work on different farms. So the first farm, so there's every year you have to work on a different farm. 3-year program. Again, every year you have to work on a different farm. Now, I wasn't able to do that in my hometown area because there was lots of hobby farms and whatnot. So I actually moved 2 hours away when I was 16 years old and just finished high school. So I moved 2 hours up north, where it's more of a grain growing area, kind of moving from Brandon to Winkler, let's say. And then you are in Germany, that would be a grain growing area. But I was 16 years old, no driver's license, and what that means is, in this program in agriculture, it's specific because you live with a farmer family. So
okay.
you live on the farm, you become their third kid basically, and you're there for everything, like breakfast, lunch, supper, their entire life. You're part of the family, the good, the bad, and the ugly. You basically become part of running the family farm. Um, and you have the meals with them, and they take care of you, and you take care of their farm, and you learn, and you go to farm school once or twice a week, depending on the year. So happened to be that I was 16 years old, away from home. Every second weekend you work on the farm, and every other second weekend you're off and you can go home. So it's a 3-hour train ride to get home. But on the first farm, the son of the farmer went to Canada. And I think he went a couple of times, but I think when I was there, he went almost for a year. I think maybe half a year. He went a couple of times, like I said. But so I met him when I started. He went to Canada. He came back, and those were the good old days where you brought the pictures back, where you had to get the like, I don't know where you guys did that in Canada back in the Shoppers Drug Mart or
Yeah,
something.
totally. Yeah.
Totally. Okay, there you go. So it's just like in Germany. The German Shoppers Drug Mart did the pictures, and we sat there at night, looked at the pictures, and he brought Crown Royal whiskey back.
I love it.
You
Yeah.
know, and we sat there, 16-year-old Marcel sitting there with my junior boss, going through these pictures and all these stories of just big fields and big machinery, cool people, the adventure, and all the fun stuff they did. They drove through entire. So he worked on a farm in Ontario. They bought a car, drove all the way to the west, worked in Alberta, and then he went back again and kind of did certain things. So, and he basically just said, "You have to go there, Marcel. Like someday you have to go to Canada. You have to see this. Like you don't have a farm at home. because again, 10 acres, I'm not at home on the home farm because 10 acres is just not big enough to make a living off. We used to have 5 cows, a couple of horses, 10 chicken, and a goat.
Yeah.
And, again, this is a hobby from back in the day when great grandpa was feeding the family with it. So, and that's how it started. And I started looking into this, and there's some farms that advertise in Germany or in Europe to get people over here to help with harvest because it's so seasonal. And yeah, so I saw an ad from a farm family from Roland, Manitoba, actually, and I applied for the ad, and turned out that year they were full already, but they said, next year you should come to Canada. So then 2009, yeah, 2009, I was the first time in Canada to good old Roland, Manitoba, and I still remember how I got picked up at the Winnipeg airport, and I stepped out of the Winnipeg airport, out of the airplane, no, sorry, in Toronto, out of the plane, and I walk through the crosswalk above, and I look down, and I see somebody sitting down there that was just about to leave Canada from the town that I was used to work in my apprenticeship time.
Oh, wow.
So it's just these funny things that we can tell lots of stories about running into people in the world. But that was the first 5 minutes within Canada. I'm running into a German out of that hometown area where I used to work. And then, yeah, fly into Winnipeg, get picked up, and do an entire harvest here. And it was a pretty wet spring that year, I remember. And I was 3 weeks early for harvest, and my boss said, you know what, here's the car for my daughter. Just take the Honda Civic and we'll see you in 3 weeks. See you later.
Wow.
I was like, your daughter's okay with that? He goes, oh, yeah. She's working here locally. It's fine. She can have fine. You take that car. It's like, okay, then. See you later. So that my 3 weeks road trip through the Rockies, did visit a family that moved from Canada decades earlier from my hometown. They live in the Rockies, and then kind of drove all over Alberta, Saskatchewan. So that was my first adventure outside of Germany, really. I never really went anywhere prior to that, and I didn't really speak much English either prior. So it was a bit of a rough journey here and there. So
that's fantastic. What an experience. So then you did the season with them, and then you went back to Germany.
Yeah, they were farming around 4,000 acres at the time, went back to Germany. And that was my first year of university. So it would have been the first summer break at university. And then typical Marcel, I come back late into university because fall is harvest. And, we were kind of known for working and working on farms and working for custom harvesting. Even when I went back, I would work for other custom harvesting operations or custom contractors on the side, besides school university. But then, yeah, got back into that and walked past the job board, as they call it there, and looked at the next job right away for next summer. So
nice. You ended up, I just love your story, and I'm living through you right now, because I don't know about other farmers in the audience. When we go on holidays, we go to farms. We go to farms in the city. Like, talk about crazy farmers, but I think farmers love to hear about other farms and traveling to other farms. So this is cool. So somewhere in there, you end up on this amazingly huge farm in Russia, I think, if I got my order right. How did that go?
Yeah, you got that right. Yeah, and you know what? I've done actually keynote speaks or keynote presentations just on farming in Russia, or the trip to there, because this podcast could be 5 hours long. Like, I have to cherry pick a couple of sentences from each to tell you here, but there's so many things we could talk about, and I'm happy to do it at some point. But Russia was basically looked at a job board. They were looking for people that could set up combines and then run some of the crews for harvest and the fall seeding, because they do a lot of fall seeding on a farm where they try to build a farm from 0 to 80,000 acres in about 3 years.
Wow.
And this was the first time harvest for them. And they were planning on harvesting 20,000 acres, and they just started last year. So they basically went in the western side of Russia on the border to the Ukraine, where unfortunately now some of the fighting is happening. So our headlands would go right to the border of Ukraine. So if we would have went over our headland, like 2 steps in the bush, we would have been in the Ukraine.
Oh, wow.
A beautiful area there, but there was so much land available because after the Soviet Union kind of fell apart there, a lot of those a lot of those state farms, as they used to call them, fell apart, and people just farmed a little bit for their own and whatnot. And the private sector and investors more so went to the further east in the central Russia, where the black soil area is, because it was very well known for the good dirt. But the western side has maybe some lighter soil, but more rain. But for some reason, that area was neglected and left behind. So this company went in there and said, well, there's all this land laying around, and there's still millions of acres out there. They're not farmed. They're just laying there. Nobody's using them. So they went in there, bought the land, cultivated it, and then started cropping there. But it was literally getting rid of, like 5 feet of grass and bush in some areas. So it was the best farmland. If you didn't forget to seed there, you had a crop. To a degree. Awesome soil. And it was wild. You show up there and they want to harvest 20,000 acres, and they just started last year, and everything is organized. It's pioneer country. It's really what it is and what it was. You build something that you can't do anywhere else in the world. It's a lot of adventure. Everything is new. You have to improvise every day. You don't speak the language. You have to learn a different language, speak with your hands and feet all day long, pick up all the swear words right away. And it was wild. Like I said, we can talk for hours about that. But the one thing I want to say is, there's with the conflict that's happening there right now between Ukraine and Russia, there's a lot of negative things that we see right now in the news. But I have to say, the people in the area that I've met, and I've been anywhere from the western side of Russia, border to Ukraine, through central Russia, black soil area, all the way to the Siberia and on the east side. So I was fortunate enough to work over there as well and see other farmers or see other farms, and had offers out there, and looked at their farms. But everywhere I've met so nice people, like such a nice people. And the hospitality is huge in Russia. And I said that before in a couple other podcasts. You can be invited from the poorest family in the town, but when they invite you and you show up, the table is full of food, and you cannot just say, "Oh yeah, I'm full," or I just ate. I'm not hungry." Like, that doesn't count. That's enough. You're offending people. You can't do that. As long as grandma says keep eating, you keep eating.
Oh boy.
It's this good. It's this good way. And people had family in Ukraine, in Russia. Like, they had family all over the borders. For them, there wasn't a border. It was just, they just lived on different sides of the border. So, it's too bad what politics can do to people, unfortunately. So I just want to say that too, because there's been good people, or there is good people in every country, no matter where you go. So
I love that. I love that you throw that in there, because sometimes, like you said, politics, right? You only hear one side. So Russia, and I know we could do an episode on your time in Canada, in Russia. You also did Brazil, Australia, and then ended up back in Canada. And touch on those briefly, because why I'm asking you this, as we all know, all of our experience in life leads us to the next step, to becoming the person we are. And then that's going to get us to Marcel, that was thinking about this product. So touch on Brazil, Australia, and getting back to Canada.
Okay, so the wild child. 2010 went to Russia. In 11, that was my last summer of university. And I went, you know what? I don't know if I want to move to Russia and start working on that farm there as a second farm manager, or if I want to move to Canada. So in 11, I went back to Russia for half the summer, jumped on the train, on the night train, flew, I think it took me 40 hours from farm to farm, flew to Montreal, and did a custom season there, running a custom forage harvester, and ran a custom crew through Montreal, Ottawa Valley area, or between Ottawa and Montreal, I should say. And then try to make up my mind, do I want to go to Russia or Canada or Germany. And then a friend of mine was in Brazil at the time, and one of our professors was always looking for people to organize, we call them excursions, where we take the semester people to a different country or a different area of Germany, and we look at a bunch of farms or ag equipment manufacturers. Now, they come to me and say, "Hey, Marcel, what do you think about organizing an excursion to Brazil?" And I went, "Oh, that'd be kind of cool, wouldn't it?" So I called my friend who was in Brazil at the time, and she said, "Yeah, I'm in." So another person, with 3 people, we organized an excursion. And a couple of weeks into the organization, I said to my professor, I said, that's actually not that easy to organize something down there, because we don't speak Portuguese and not many people speak English down there. And he looks at me, he goes, "Oh yeah, we knew, like since years, nobody has organized anything down there for us or to go down there. Like none of the students, sorry, I got to rephrase it. He said, none of the students in the last few years has ever organized to go to Brazil because it's been way too hard. But we knew that you were crazy enough to do that. So we told you to, we asked you to." I said, "Okay, well, thank you. Okay, cool." So we got it done. We took almost 40 people down to Brazil for a 3-week trip. Started in Rio de Janeiro for a couple of days, went down to Sao Paulo, looked at all the harbor, the export stuff. And then we had a bus that we rented, and we drove zigzag through the country to the west side, to the Argentina border, where we looked at some of the largest waterfalls in the world, Foz do Iguazu. Everybody that goes to Brazil should make sure they go to Foz do Iguazu, because Niagara Falls is a puddle against it. Nothing bad against Niagara.
Yeah.
It's awesome place. But when you compare the sheer size, it's crazy how much bigger those other waterfalls are. And then we went down there with a speedboat, and they drive you right into the waterfalls.
Wow.
There was a drought, so he wrecked the prop of the speedboat. So then the speedboat, we had no way to control it, and we landed in a beach in Argentina. Like it was just a wild mess.
Yeah.
So, but fun.
Yeah.
Everybody had to sign waivers before we left Germany, right? Because it's pretty dangerous down there too, depending where you go. And then, yeah, 2 weeks, after 2 weeks, 2/3 flew back. And the other crew, we took them up to Mato Grosso area, to the northwestern part of Brazil, where the large soybean area is, like basically the prairies of Brazil. And we toured farmers, seed companies, ag colleges, universities, and amazing people down there. And they were harvesting soybeans, and the corn planter is right behind it, like literally right behind it. Like and you see corn that was in the ground for a few days, and it's popping out of the ground. And you're like, how, this is nuts. Like, how do we compete with this? But I saw the combines going there, and I saw combines going in every country we went, and it's been the same thing everywhere. It doesn't matter where you went to. The people were doing the same thing or not doing the same things along the way, and that kind of triggered something. So we got those 40 people back to Germany. I finished my Bachelor of Science thesis for a university there, which is, they now call it Bachelor of Science, but we were the last people there where they just changed it to Bachelor of Science. So we were the last ones where it kind of went from ag engineering to Bachelor of Science. Okay. So it's basically the thing says Bachelor of Science, engineering, ag. So in Germany it was always engineering, but that's just details on a piece of paper. The thing was, I wrote my thesis and then got my wisdom teeth changed out quickly yet. And then I think 4 weeks later, I was in Canada planting corn.
Wow.
So it was like last semester, Brazil tour, finish the thesis, fly to Canada, boom, and basically move away from Germany, because I made my decision in between to move to Canada instead and just try Canada for a bit, because it was basically adventure. I always thought I was going to do something for myself. I really loved to, maybe rent some acres, work on a farm, rent some land, or, start snow plowing or custom contracting work, custom harvesting. But when I moved to Canada, the land prices just went nuts, and it was never the opportunity that came up. Yeah. So I worked on a bunch of different farms in Canada and started to learn English kind of over two-way radio, running a forage harvester. And that's how I got back to Canada. Australia came later, though. Australia was when I already started Bushel Plus. But that's kind of the quick and dirty version of why Brazil, Germany again, back to Canada, and that then I settled there in Ontario for a couple of years. Yeah.
Okay. I love it. Thank you for sharing your story. It's fascinating. And like I said, as farmers, we just love to hear about farms around the world. I could arrange tours and just go to farms around the world too.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
okay, so you're in Canada, you're living here, you're working. I love entrepreneur stories and getting into somebody's mind and going, okay, what were you doing? How did this come about? What was the first spark? So you're working in Canada and you had the idea for the Smart Pan system. Walk me through how this product development journey started. I'm curious.
Yeah, basically it started before the thinking about it started prior, because it's really, that's what's been doing most of my life. And that's where we also have to say, I was fortunate to work with the good people along the way, where I can't take all the credit. I had people helping me with the design and helping me with drawings and whatnot, right? So I always like to say I'm the one that started Bushel Plus and brought it to market, but it's really been a great way of, or a great fortune of putting things together here and ideas together and bringing this into the market. It's been a team effort, really. Bushel Plus is all about the team, really. So that's why I always like to mention the team and the people that helped me along the way. I like to say I'm the founder, but I want to make sure the team is, the team is mentioned here along the way. And basically, it's running behind the combine with a shovel sucks. That's as short as I can tell. Or you have a cookie sheet. You throw cookie sheets underneath the combine to try and catch a sample from the grain loss. Because so everybody who doesn't know Bushel Plus yet, we're all about, like, we're the harvest optimization company, where everything we do is around optimizing harvest, around grain harvest right now, and optimizing combines. So in order to optimize a combine, you got to know what's the grain loss coming out the back of the machine. And a way to do this in the past was looking on the ground and looking how many kernels are there. And I've done that lots, but it came to the point where we realized, specifically in Russia on these large farms, then that it's like, what? We have really no idea what we're losing here. Like, it looks good, maybe not, doesn't look good. The first year we had 4 combines, then we bought 4 more, then we had custom combiners come in, and all of a sudden you have more than 20 combines floating around. Then you have a custom harvesting guy coming in with 30 machines. So, and you have all these combines going around, and you go, okay, like, if every combine just throws out 2, 3, 4, 5 more percent, like, we're screwed. It's a lot of money. So then we started throwing pans underneath them to get a better sample, to figure out what's coming out the back. Because looking on the ground is just not accurate enough. And what we figured out in the pan is what we thought was great when we looked on the ground. Actually, the reality was it was 2 to 3 times higher as what we thought it was when looking on the ground. And that's kind of constant throughout. But then throwing these pans becomes dangerous, and it's also dirty work because you're still in the dust. You're running through the straw and chaff. And then one of my buddies fell once beside a combine. Thankfully, nothing happened. But, and since we heard lots of stories from people that spoke to us and said, oh, yeah, like, our neighbor fell, or we had something on the farm and this and that, so there's lots of things where this is just too dangerous. It's just not worth it. I said to somebody today, talked about the product, and I said, well, what's a new leg worth these days? Well, you can't pay for one. Like, it's just, just the liability alone for a dealership or a farm to have somebody running beside a combine throwing a pan underneath is just not good. So basically making it faster, easier, and simpler, to playing with prototypes and playing with designs, and then bringing those to farms and just trying them out. And then all of a sudden one farmer sees it, the next farmer sees it, and hey, I want one. Do you have some of those gadgets? And you don't really plan on starting a business. Like, I didn't come to Canada years ago and said, yeah, we're going to start Bushel Plus, and there's going to be a company and I'm going to talk about the team all the time. Like, that was not in the books. In the books, it was Marcel is running around helping some farmers setting combines just because he likes that. And all of a sudden, the farmers asked about if they can buy some of those gadgets. And then they told others. Then I had an opportunity to go to a trade show and had one sample there. And then at the trade show, there's people, okay, yeah, I want one. And here's a check. Like they write you a check right then and there.
Wow.
And I said to them, like, okay, like, hey, it's a few months away and I got to build them yet, right? Just so you know. And they go, oh yeah, don't worry about it, man. Like, yeah, well, it's harvest won't happen before August. As long as you ship it in July, we're good. And if not, we'll know where to find you.
Nice.
And that's the reason why Bushel Plus got going, because such an awesome support from farmers that trusted this random German redhead that's talking to them about these drop pans, right? And I know in other areas of the world that would have maybe been different. That's the awesome thing about this North American culture, where there was trust there and people liked what they saw. And then, I had money to buy parts and start building them, and then start building a few more and selling more, go to more trade shows, and kind of a snowball effect started going, start marketing, social media. And then one thing came to the next. And now Bushel Plus is a company with, around 35 employees, and we're exporting in 35 countries now.
Wow.
And then like, yeah. And again, it's been a lot of help, even the R&D in the beginning. We did that on farms, and somebody has an idea, and then I have an idea, next person has an idea. Like it's been a great team and a great effort along the way. So
I love it. And I know what you're going to say to this, Marcel, but I got to say this to you. Congrats. Like, that's fantastic. And I know it's a team effort, and I know the farmers supported you, but to be able to take a product like that and develop it to such a need, have such support, and be up to 35 staff and all those companies, congrats. That's amazing.
thank you.
I
Yeah,
love,
thank you.
if you can't tell, my whole show is about farm, business, and me as a person, entrepreneurship. So listening to your story and being able to tell it to our audience, help you tell it to our audience, that's my jam. So I'm so excited.
I appreciate it. Yeah, it's definitely a tough road as an entrepreneur. I tell you that. It's, people ask me how it is, and be quite frank, it's sometimes it's a lonely road. And it's a roller coaster of excitement and anxiety. And a lot of people don't talk about it. A lot of successful people out there, people look up to them and say, wow, they have it good. Well, but they probably if we would talk about my failures here, and what it took me to get here, and how many sleepless nights I had and still have sometimes, and how many times we tried something that didn't work, this podcast would be a lot longer than talking about the success. So I don't beat around the bush there either. And sometimes I get invited to do keynote speaking on entrepreneurship, even in colleges and universities. And I say to them prior, I said, hey, just say, I don't sugarcoat this stuff. Like, I'm going to tell them that entrepreneurship sucks sometimes, because it's, and again, I don't want to be negative about it, but you just have to be aware that it's a tough nut to crack some days. So, because there's a lot of responsibilities on our shoulders. And specifically, when you really care about your customers and your people, it's a lot of pressure on you. So
I'm so happy you said that. And it's funny because in some of these interviews, I have 3 questions. What's the hardest part, the best part, and surprised you the most? But I know we had a lot of stuff to talk about for the travel I wanted you to share in product. So I didn't include those questions. And you're so right, because as farmers in the audience, we're all the original entrepreneur. And the funny part is, whether it's farming or businesses, we tend to show the posts about the wins, the growth. And we all know that it's a lot of hard for those peak moments, right? So I love that you shared that.
Yeah, it's important to talk about that too. And yeah, you're right. Like, and I just met a mechanic a couple of days ago, and he said he was self-employed now. And I say this to every time I meet somebody that's self-employed or a farmer, I say to them, like, I have the biggest respect for people that start their own thing, because it's not easy.
Totally.
That it's not to say negative things about being employed. That's not what I'm saying. But to put it in perspective, they sometimes need to hear these words of encouragement, because when you're self-employed, there is nobody that comes around and pats you on the shoulder and say, hey, great job today. because it's just you by
Yeah.
yourself in the beginning. And that's
Yeah.
a tough one.
When you said it's a lonely road, I get it. I built this company 14 years ago from scratch, competing against media giants. It was,
Good for you.
hang on, Tracy, hang on, right? So
Yeah.
I love that we share this because you look at farming too, and it totally relates. There's so much mental health because it's stress, stress, stress. And if we're not frank and talking about those hard times, sometimes we go, am I the only one feeling this? Am I
Mhm.
failing? So I love that you're so transparent on that. Thank you. Okay, so you guys, I want to pivot here. You have three products that go into helping farmers optimize their harvest. So why don't we start there and then we can continue to weave through and talk about that. You have the Smart Pan system, Mad Concaves, and the MiniCombine system. Do you want to share a little bit about all three of those and then we'll talk about how each of them help farmers, or do that at the
Yeah.
same time, whatever flows nice for you?
Yeah. Yeah, sure. Cool. The smart pens, that's really how the company started. We started calling it a drop pan system, and now we rebranded to a smart pan system because it can do a lot more cool features by now. But essentially, it is a harvest loss management system. Okay. So you can figure out what the combine is throwing out the back in terms of grain loss. And how it works is you have if you go on our website and you see a silver piece, that's what we call the carrier unit. And the carrier unit has two permanent magnets on it. We attach that carrier to the combine. So either underneath the back axle, underneath the feeder house, or even on the side of the header, depending where we want to measure our losses from. And then inside the carrier, we have a permanent electromagnets that are holding on to a red test pan. That's where the pan that drops. So what we do with this, we put this all in the combine. We start combining. We set up the combine the way we want it. We set our loss sensors to a point where we like them to be. So, for example, actually, I'm going to skip this part for a second. We set our loss sensors. We drop the pen and keep combining, and then somebody else or yourself can then stop and get the pan. And then out of this pan that collected a physical sample from the grain loss, so there's chaff, straw, and hopefully not as much grain in the pan. We can then, to get the grain out, we can dump that from the pan into what we call an air separator that comes with the system. That's both pieces are battery operated. The carrier is and the air separator is. So you don't have to mess around with any wires or brackets on the combine. Everything is portable and rechargeable. So you clean the sample from the chaff and the straw away from the grain. And therefore, just the grain is left, and you can weigh the grain on a sample. Sounds complicated now when I talk about it. In reality, it's less than 4 minutes when you do that. So in under 4 minutes, you can figure out what your combine is losing, because you can then take the weight of the scale, put it into our smartphone app. So it's called the Smart Drop app because we're working with the drop system. And we can then put in the header width, what kind of crop we're combining, and a couple other factors. And then our app breaks it down to bushel per acre loss. And the interesting thing is dollar per acre and dollar per hour grain loss.
Oh, wow.
And then when you see that in some examples, there's $800 and $1,200 an hour, $1,200 an hour going out the back of a combine, one machine, okay? That is just, it's crazy, but it happens, and it happens faster than we may think. And it's not always the driver. We're not here to blame the driver. There could be something broken on the combine. The sensor couldn't be adjusted properly, or conditions changed. It is, for us, this is a tool to get to know your combine better. It's not to drop that pan every couple of minutes. You want to drop that pan. You want to calibrate the loss sensors. Because the thing with the loss sensor is, I got to get a bit technical here for a second. Let's say you have doesn't matter what kind of combine you have, but you have a bar inside the cab in the display, and if the bar LED goes up, if there's more losses out the back. So essentially, there's a grain loss sensor in the back of the combine by the sieves and by the rotor, and it's just a contact plate. So the more grain hits that plate, the higher the display in the cab should go. Okay, pretty simple. However, they added a sensitivity sensor or a sensitivity dial to this whole system. So now what you can have is you have a lot of grain hitting that plate, but if you turn the sensitivity down in the cab, the display doesn't go up. So now we fool ourselves, okay? Now we think there's not much grain going out the back, but in reality there is. So what we're doing with the pan, we're dropping the pan and then setting the sensitivity for the display on the sensor. So essentially, let's say we're setting up the combine, we're setting the sensitivity, so it's about a third way up on the loss display, or on a green combine, you have to push a button. It's called set the current. Then your display kind of goes halfway up. You drop the pan, and let's say we found 1 bushel per acre loss in that drop pan. Now we know when the display is either a third way up or on the green one halfway up, that's 1 bushel out the back. Now I can trust that display in the cab, and I can actually drive by that display. Where prior, I have no idea when that display goes up, if I'm going from 1 bushel to 5 or from 1 to 1.2, like we have literally no idea. Okay. You know, it's like doing carpentry work with a measurement tape that doesn't have any numbers or lines on it, basically. And then that helps also with the combine automation, because the combine automation does the same thing. The computer of the automation looks for the loss sensor display, and if a display shows a lot, then the automation slows the combine down. So the automation slows the combine down. So same as the normal driver reacts in the moment. You see the display going up, most people would pull the lever back and drive slower. So again, the automation is not going to fix it or make the smart pen obsolete. The smart pen became more important with the combine automation. And the big OEMs, every OEM's original equipment manufacturer, you name it, John Deere, New Holland, Case, Claas, Fendt, all of them, Gleaners, they all use our smart pen system on the corporate level already, in the marketing department, in the R&D departments. So they're a pretty big supporter of that. And we're trying to get that feedback now back to the dealers and the farmers. Because if the engineers that are inventing the combines are utilizing our equipment to make them work and set them up, then a farmer needs to do that too. So it's a good thing for a farmer. Takes a couple of minutes, harvest faster, harvest with more capacity and less grain loss out the back.
Okay. Why don't we go to the MAD Concaves and then talk about the MiniCombine system, and then we'll loop back to precision harvest and the benefits there.
Yeah, right on. Cool. So MAD Concaves, we were very fortunate to acquire a company called MAD Concaves here out of Manitoba in the fall of 2020. And to make a long story short, the company was founded by 3 people, very smart people, all respect for them. And they've invented a concave system that is modular. So there's 2 things to it. There's no wire concaves anymore in the lineup. It's now a bar and grade style design, which means there's more aggressive thrashing. But the aggressive thrashing does not mean there's any kernels that break or we're more aggressive on the grain. What we are doing, we're getting the grain kernels out of the heads and out of the pods faster while keeping the straw inside the combine longer. So we're not grinding up the entire crop mat that goes in the combine and then have issues getting the grain out of the powder and the short straw in our rotor and separating area. We are getting the grains out of the concaves faster and therefore more efficient. Second of all, which relates into more capacity and less grain loss. That's the short version of that. The other part that it is, so if you ever changed concaves, everybody is listening right now, if you ever changed concaves on an STS or an S-Series John Deere machine or on a New Holland CR 22-inch rotor machine, you know that that can take some time, that the concaves are in an area where it's not as easy to reach into, and you usually need 2 people, unless you're super, super strong. A lot better with 2 people. And that can take a couple hours. You know, we have some people telling us 2 people takes at least 3 hours sometimes, depending on the crop, depending how it is. So now, in comparison, the modular system that we have with Mad Concaves is we take the original concaves out, and what we do for those machines, we put something in that we call a split frame. So it's basically the same shape as the original concave, but it's just the outside shape of that concave. So it's a frame. And the inside of the frame, we can put modules in. So we can put a module in from left and right, and those modules are only like 10 by 12 inches, maybe a bit bigger depending on the combine. So now we can have that split frame always inside the combine, never comes out, and one person by themselves can now change these inserts in a modular way in 10 to 15 minutes with a ratchet or a battery operated ratchet.
Wow.
So we're talking of efficiency, and now we have customers that do cereals in the daytime and canola at night and can switch concaves real quickly and be more efficient instead of just running concaves that are, one fits all, which doesn't really work out there because you still have to mess around with cover plates or settings a different way. So because it's so fast to change concaves now with us, you may as well have those modules and be more efficient and spend those 10 minutes switching them real quick, because switching our inserts is faster than setting up cover plates on other concaves out there, or switching the entire OEM concave out, for example. So it's all about efficiency, making it faster, quicker, and then those inserts are designed for certain crops. So for example, pod cheddar, canola, we have what we call a finger grade concave, which has been proven very well in pod cheddar canola, which is hard to thrash. And we just came out with a brand new design called the O grade for corn and soybeans, which is a game changer in current corn and soybean samples out there.
Nice. Sounds fantastic.
Yeah, there's a lot of feedback there that people had around round bar concaves in corn and soybeans, where they were either plug-in, or in soybeans, they had a lot of green pods coming through in the sample. And some farmers even told us they had heated up bins because they had to recycle the bin because their green pods were in the sample, and because it wasn't thrashing it right, and they couldn't get it through the combine properly, had to overload the return in it. And this is not how you want to run a combine. So we set out with our R&D team that we were able to deliver something different, tested it South Dakota, North Dakota, a couple other areas, and Western Canada. And the results have been great, with samples from corn growers been growing 30 years of corn in the States. And they said, you know what, I've never seen a sample like this.
Nice.
So
that's fantastic. Wow. Okay. Do you want to touch on the MiniCombine system next, and then we'll go to my next question for you?
Thank you. Real quick on the MiniCombine, because that's what it's all about. It's being quick and take a quick sample in the field. So you can check if your field, just like behind me, you can see if this field is ready to harvest. And instead of taking your real combine out to the field with the header, the combine, maybe a truck or a grain cart, and then start the combine just to take a sample, a moisture sample of that field, and then figure out, wow, it's actually too wet yet, we can't harvest. Instead of doing that, you can now take our MiniCombine to the field, which is a handheld MiniCombine device with a rechargeable battery on it. Acts just like a normal combine. There's a thrashing drum in there, concaves, and a fan. And all you do, there is an opening in the front, like a flap you can open, you turn and twist it, and you just kind of dip it into the crop, you close the flap there, and then you push the heads into the thrashing drum and rip off the heads or the pods. And basically it thrashes it inside, it blows the chaff out to the side, you have to adjust a bit of the wind, and then the grain falls in the bottom of a sample canister, sample jar, I should say. And, it takes you a few minutes. You take a bunch of samples. You should take, half a dozen or maybe even a dozen samples in the field, so you get a good average. And then what we found is whatever we find in the moisture sample of the MiniCombine, we add 1% of moisture to it, because when the real combine goes in, there's a lot of moisture that comes in with the straw that usually ups the moisture by about 1%. But now you can check a couple of fields in half an hour, and you just have this thing in your truck, and you do that. And I can't take the credit for it. We can't take the credit for inventing it. It's actually an inventor from France, really smart guy who invented this years ago and refined it. A lot of farmers in Europe have it. I saw it over there and I went, why are we not having this? Like, the fields are so far away, and even for people that have the fields behind their house are now coming back to us and saying, yeah, this thing is a no-brainer. Like, putting hours on the combine is so expensive right now, not just on the fuel that you're saving, but just the time and the effort, and then having more hours on the engines and the thrashing drum, that it doesn't help anybody. So it's paid off in the first day just by saving the fuel and the time.
Yeah, no kidding. I'm just sitting here going, what a world we live in. The innovation that the industry does, that you guys are doing, the ease that we get to do stuff with now, right? With the tools that you guys offer. So I want to loop in, if you've covered everything that you want to cover about the 3 products, I want to talk to you about precision harvest. I mean, I'm going to do a sales pitch for you. We're looking at these products. So I go, okay, safety, time savings, less wastage, more money, right? More yield, more money.
Yeah.
So there's the sales pitch on all those products. But I heard you use the word precision harvest, which was clever. Do you want to use all those benefits and talk about precision harvest and your train of thought on that?
Yeah, 100%. So basically, precision harvest. So there is a lot of talk about, the precision, or having the precision at seeding, for spraying, and for fertilizer. And, to grow a crop, we are spending money on the best seed, the best fertilizer, the best timing, the best equipment. The air seeder needs to be calibrated. Everybody knows how to calibrate an air seeder. That's a given. If it's a given, if you go from canola to barley or vice versa, you have to calibrate that air seeder tank. So why don't we take that precision, detailed thinking and apply it to harvest? That's where this thinking basically is coming from, because at harvest, we're running a $500,000 or sometimes $1 million combine. We're looking on the ground and we go, yeah, that's good enough. Let's go. But meanwhile, we bought chemical in June or in July, where somebody told us, spray this and you get 2 bushel more an acre. And, I've been that agronomist. I worked as an agronomist, and I looked at the trials, and there's products that can do that 100%, not knocking them. But, you do all these things and you sell it to a farmer, and the farmer believes in this, and you come out to the field and you check the combine, and then we're chucking 5 bushel out the back.
Yeah.
That's where the precision harvest is coming in. Like, let's take a few minutes and figure out this machine. And I know it's hard. I'm a farm kid myself. The combine stands there for 2 minutes. It feels like 3 hours. I get it. It's not easy. However, we made it easy, and we're also doing more and more training on it with our dealers and some of our customers to tell them about how easy it really is. And it's kind of an eye-opening. Even some people that used it for a couple of years realize now, oh, that's what it's intended for, and this is what I can do. There's a lot of our job is educational, where I was by myself with a couple of people for a few years. Now we have a larger team. We can cover more ground. We can get more knowledge out there. But just taking the time to dial in those machines is so critical, because it will pay back. It doesn't feel like it in the moment, but with every time I'm checking for grain loss, it's not really checking for loss. It's checking what is the value I can add to my farm, because there's average canola losses in Western Canada. There are years ago they put out numbers between 4 and 6 bushel an acre. Last numbers that came out between 1 and 6 bushel. It's just like 6 bushel an acre. Even if it's 3 bushel an acre, that is too much. If put canola, let's look at canola. 1 bushel of canola is 50 pounds of seed. That's 10 times the seeding rate. So we're putting 10 times the seeding rate back out of the combine into the field. So now I have 10 times the seeding rate regrowth opportunity right behind me. Now 2 or 3 or 4 bushel out the back. And not just we, even independent studies have shown that there is 10 bushel canola loss out there. And people always say, well, that doesn't happen. Well, it actually, when you look at the pictures, how it looks on the ground, it doesn't look that bad. 6 bushel canola loss doesn't look so bad on looking on the ground. Especially you don't see some of those kernels. Some kernels are broken up. Even in wheat, some kernels are broken or small. You don't really see them when you look on the ground. So you can tell I'm getting a bit passionate about this because it's just there is just a lot of money to be saved, and that money can be in a farmer's pocket and into a country's ability to export that grain and put more food in the food supply chain. And that's our mission at Bushel Plus. Our mission is to increase global food production by dramatically reducing harvest loss. It's a bigger thing than just a smart pan. It's a bigger thing than just a company. It's a bigger thing than just Marcel or us as a team. I always tell our team members that this is bigger than just us. We're building something where we can really help the egg world to have more grain out there. And especially in these days and age here, in these days where you see what's going on in the world, there is the grain, the food is there. It's just about how can we capture it and how can we distribute it properly.
I love it. Here's my feeling listening to you. I'm getting passionate about it too, because farming, business, money, that's my jam. That's what I'm about, trying to make farmers more money. But I'm looking at it, listening to you going, farmers, they're precision up here with the seed, the inputs. So they're perfect. And then comes to harvest. Oh, we're doing good. And then it goes out the back, right? Is that right? Am I hearing it kind of right?
Yeah, and I think I'm allowed to say that in a respectful manner, because a lot of farmers have told me this, flat out. It's like, well, Marcel, that's, I guess, just what we do. But then they come back and say, holy moly, we bought your system and we realized what we could save. And we also realized we don't have to drive slower, because a lot of people are afraid that we're just slowing them down. But that's the last thing we want to do. We want them to realize that you don't have to slow down. You can change settings, but it's that slowing down is not always the key, but it takes some bit of time. Just with everything takes a bit of time to get used to it. But once you're used to it and you use it the proper way, we have tons of people coming back now to farm shows. They say, we would not harvest without this anymore. It's essential harvesting tool.
Nice.
Doesn't matter the combine, doesn't matter if you have automation or not. It's essential.
Yeah. And that comment right there leads into my next 2 questions. And I'm going to ask you the 2 questions together because I think they go hand in hand.
Sure.
The feedback that you've been receiving from farmers, you touched on it, dealers, manufacturers, and then also we were pretty much there already. But I want to talk about ROI, right? We talk about the cost of buying these products or the cost of slowing down. Can you touch on feedback that you've received and then work it into ROI question and answer?
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to talk about this because it's really the voice of the customer that's important to us, and I appreciate I can share that here. So, for us, we're pretty strong in our brand pillars where we want to have quality experiences for our customers and external people, as well as internal in the team, and we want to have farmer success. It's 2 of our 4 brand pillars. And that is super important for us. So some of the feedback we got for the MiniCombine, for example, paid back first time using it because I'm not putting expensive hours on my combine and not wasting fuel to get to the field, and have then grain even being dumping in the ditch because I have wet grain in my hopper in the combine. Concaves. I can now switch concaves by myself in 10-15 minutes. We have tons of that kind of feedback. We have tons of feedback where the sample is better, less dockage, better thrashing, better capacity, because they can get the grain out of the concaves faster. Pod cheddar canola, huge success rate there because it's hard to get the pods open. And we've seen areas in canola where there was unthreshed pods coming out the back of the combines like crazy. And it's hard to do that with cover plates and some of the other concaves where ours are just designed to battle just that. Still needs a bit of tweaking, but the ROI on that, you can do that math, and people come back and say, you know what, the Concaves paid for itself in the first year. Like just in canola paid for itself, just to having that capacity and getting that canola in there. And then the Smart Pan, you know, if you run the numbers on normal grain prices, not when they're crazy and canola is $20, but when canola is kind of in the normal ranges again, and wheat is in normal ranges again, and soybeans, you know, our numbers showed at 100 to 120 acres. If you use it properly, the thing is paid for. And if it's not in the first 120 acres, then, you know, it will for sure pay in the first harvest, for sure. But for the most part, we got that it paid off in the first week. And then, you know, we had a couple of people coming back that said, you know what, we were doing really good, actually. It wasn't that bad with grain loss. And I would say, you know what, that's good for you. Let's drive faster. And they go, what? I said, yeah, if you're good with grain loss, everything is good. Let's push the machine. Let's get more acres out of the machine, you know, because now in the past, it would be, oh, you can't drive this fast. You're throwing too much grain out the back. Well, but how do you know if you don't check? Now we can push the machine. We can try to drive faster, change some of the settings, because we can't use the same settings if we want to push the machine. It just doesn't work. Then you will for sure have more loss. So you got to change some settings, push the machine harder. And now you have a Bushel Plus system or the Smart Drop system to check the combine while you push more acres. So 100, 120 acres paid for. We have multiple farmers came back to us and said, you know what, this thing made us $50,000, $60,000 in the first week of using it easily. And, you know, then a system like this, put it the other way, okay? Cost you around, let's say, just over $3,000, depending what system, right? Depending kind of what you all get with it. If you farm 3,000 acres, that's $1 per acre. Over 5 years, because it's good build, you know, like powder coated steel, quality aluminum, and we have parts available if needed, and you know that stuff will last. So over 5 years, like we're talking peanuts, absolutely peanuts. And one of the farmers said this in a customer testimonial video. They said, this is peanuts. I don't know why not everybody's buying it. But it's easy for me to say this on this side because I'm doing this all the time. If you're new to it, you have to wrap your mind around it. And I'm also not a pushy salesperson. I said how many times at trade shows, I'm doing this now for years. I said to people, you know what? It's no pressure. You don't have to buy it today. Just think about it. You know, as long as you do something on your farm that works for you, it's all good. Well, some of the people came back 3 years later and they bought it and they said, yeah, you know, Marcel, we should have bought it the first time we talked to you. Like our neighbors have it now, and our cousin opened our eyes the other week or the other harvest. And, you know, it's coming. It's coming. And again, don't want to be pushy. It has to work on everybody's farm, and it has to work on your farm. We're passionate about making it right for you. We're not here to sell you something just to sell you something. We want to make sure we bring value to your farm and doing the right thing. So.
Love it. I love it. Okay, that has been a wonderful journey of talking about the products, about precision harvest, the benefits, ROI. Two last things that I want to cover. I want to give you a spot if you want to close out with any words on the products, words to farmers. I think you did a great job. And then I want to ask you about a new and exciting service that you guys are going to be announcing very soon, Harvest Academy. So any parting final words on the products and words of wisdoms to a farmer, and then let's chat about Harvest Academy.
Yeah, right on. Okay, so wisdom about the products. You know, we have a lot of dealerships in North America that are carrying our product. We have also a great website with FAQs, social media channels where you find us at Bushel Plus. Reach out, ask the questions, you know, come see us at trade shows and let's look at the product and really think about the inputs that you're putting into your crop and, you know, the stress and sleepless nights we have over weather. And when the crop is at harvest, think about this. We can only harvest once. We can reseed, we can respray, but we can only harvest once. A smart grandpa said that once, and that is so true. And we should think about that every time we get into harvest mode. So spend that valuable time on it. And for some of those tips and tricks, that's where you mentioned the Harvest Academy. So a new service or a new department that we're launching at Bushel Plus, because it's been about education a lot over the last few years. Like I said, it's about bringing value. And we've been asked so many times if we're doing combine clinics, because when we went somewhere and we spoke, you know, we had a spot for 20 minutes or half an hour here and there. Farmers came to us after and said, hey, in those 20 minutes at Bushel Plus talk, we learned more than most of the other day here. Mm-hmm. Or, you know, comparing it to other keynotes they went to, and so forth, which was great to hear. But, you know, it took us some time to put this together, needed more people. But I think we're at the point now where we are able to pull this together, and we're launching what we're going to call the Harvest Academy. So the Bushel Plus Harvest Academy, where we will do our own combine clinics in a neutral way. This is not taken away from dealer combine clinics or from open houses. This is really for us that we have a service offering where dealers, seed companies, retailers, other people can invite us to come as a keynote and pick out of some of the modules that we're offering. And on the other hand, like we've done this in other areas before, not calling it the Harvest Academy, but it was essentially just that, where at trade shows, we organized combine clinics, and we also work with a seed company called New Seed, that we've done their combine clinics last year for the Carinata harvest growers in Texas and Georgia area, and also for the omega-3 canola growers in Montana and North Dakota. So we've done that with them already last year, kind of as a pilot. And, you know, the feedback has been phenomenal. I just talked to one of the farmers here about a testimonial, and he was still over the moon. He said, you know, I hope I can go to another one. He says there was so much knowledge there. It helped me right just before canola harvest to listen to this. And what it will be is, it's not us coming to the field, setting up the combine for you. It is, we want to be proactive. We want to help you solve some of those questions before they even come up. So we want to do it pre-harvest and post-harvest when the knowledge is potentially still fresh, and then really set you up for success. Because a lot of the things that we can do to have a successful harvest, we can do before the harvest even starts. And when I say we, it's every farmer with the combine. There's a lot of things that we can do on the combine around setup and maintenance that we can do before the dust even flies. And that is what that's really is about. So if you work for a company and you feel you want to get a keynote speaker in about this topic, get a hold of us. If you want to organize a combine clinic with your neighbors, your friends, or somebody else, or have ideas, or some of the councils, get a hold of us. That's basically a broad target, but we have modules for different ways of doing it, from, you know, half-hour keynote to full day of combine clinics, for example. So lots of different things we can do. And it's been really born out of the feedback and asks that we got from farmers over the years. And it's going to be neutral. It's not going to be a selling session there that we only talk about our own products. We're going to talk about anything that will work on your farm in the moment. If you have things in your combine that work for you, great. We'll help you make it work, and we'll talk about it.
Fantastic.
And to that degree, we also have a company in Germany that we're continuing their business. So it's called Ag Training, and we're going to roll Ag Training into the Harvest Academy here in the future. And they have been doing Ag Training since 1996. And the gentleman wanted to retire, and he's been doing combine clinics mostly in Europe, but all over the world. And we're bringing that knowledge mixed in with our knowledge and the knowledge we got from other areas in the world, putting this all together and putting together a really powerful program around harvest optimization, Harvest Academy. And yeah, like I said before, and I started this with saying I was fortunate to work with the right kind of people, and I can end the podcast with it. I'm still fortunate to work with the right kind of people, because it's fun that people want to work on something that brings value to farmers. And that's going to be the Harvest Academy for us here.
I love it. You know what? All of this, the products, the Harvest Academy, to me, it makes sense. When we're looking at the cost of machinery, the cost of all our inputs, why would we not want to optimize and get the most at the end, right?
Yeah, we pay for an agronomist, for an accountant. We have expert for this, we have an expert for that. So I think it's time that we look at harvest where you really gonna make your money at. Let's look at that together and make you successful there. Because there's a lot of different things out there, but for a fact, when harvest is going on, the crop is matured, the crop is there. Now it's time to capture it. And that's a cool thing, and then learning from somebody that's done combine clinics for so many years and all over the world setting up combines, and I've been in touch with him for forever. That it's an honor to take on that work when somebody like that wants to retire. Same with the guys from Mad Concave, the founders of Mad Concaves, who trusted me and my team to take on that company and acquire it and keep trucking with the innovations. I don't take this stuff lightly. I'm very passionate about it, and we're gonna give her to do the right thing for the customer. That's for sure.
I love it. My motto here on the Impact Farming Show is bring the people and ideas that will impact your farming operation. And it sounds like you completely align with that, impacting the farmer and their operation. Marcel, this has been lovely. We will put links to the Bushel Plus website. When the Harvest Academy is launched, which will be around the launch of this podcast, can they find information on the main website as well?
Yes, it will be on the main website and on our social media.
Okay.
And if you Google Bushel Plus, the Harvest Academy, I'm sure you will find us. But go to the main website and you'll find the main information there. So about all the products, all the services, bit of a history about us, and reach out from anywhere in the world. If there's probably people that listen to this podcast from different areas of the world, which would be interesting to hear from everybody. So yeah. And it's, again, we're already in 35 countries, and but we're also here to support people locally where we started. So because everything is built in the prairies.
Beautiful. Marcel, this has been such a fun episode. I love hearing about Marcel starting his farming journey in Germany, your travels, the experience you've had, your product launch, and the things you're doing for agriculture. So thank you so much. I have really appreciated you coming on the show. Thanks, Marcel.
Hey, thank you very much for having me. Thank you very much for everybody out there that's dealing with us and will be dealing with us in the future. Have a good harvest.
Love it. You guys in the audience, if you love this episode as much as I did, like it, share it, get it out there so everybody can hear and learn more about these fantastic products. See you guys next week. Bye-bye.